from a young age. And when I started, there was a defining point that made me realise this is something that I particularly enjoy. It was like I spent a lot of time, like the negative spaces in my life, when I was walking places and doing like spaces in my life where I was bored, I would beatbox. And there was this one point when I was walking down this particular street, and I realised that as I was doing this thing, I was almost dancing, bobbing my head along to it. So as I was physically performing, I was acknowledging it and listening to it and enjoying it at the same time. And that once I realised that I could move myself, I realised that using this thing that a lot of people do see as something quite novel, and this it's like pulling a plane with your teeth sort of thing, can actually make people dance. So what I want to give you a slight idea about is basically my process and how I would find these sounds that actually have no relevance in language or any place, and like how do I achieve my goals. So I'm going to start at the very basics and something I called sound trees, and I managed to do a talk in Tokyo recently with a crowd that couldn't speak any English because my translator was actually having trouble understanding my London accent. Yeah. Anyway, I actually had 2 translators for myself, and it was quite embarrassing. But anyway, so if I was to start right at the beginning, when I first started out beatboxing, you can start with something called a kick drum, which is very similar to speech. And if people actually forget that the alphabet is an array of pressures, an array of sounds which have been notated and they're understood. So a B sound, b, and I thought, okay, there's a pressure there, b, b. If I apply a pressure without the vocal, you get very simple. And I thought, okay, so how can I add to this sound that I've found with the skills I already have as someone that's not a beatboxer? And obviously I can hum. So I started off with and they join in the middle. Not that impressive, but it was a start. And to take that, so maybe a few months later on, I realised that thinking about that pressure, I could continue it. So, and so from exploring, I was like, okay, I've got this sound now, and taking the same idea of which I discovered, I can hum over the top. Can I hum over the top? So, and I realised, okay, so I've got these 2 sounds now. What variables can I apply? What can I change about it? And obviously it did take some practice, but I really I could start to change the pitch of the 2. So if you start with, and then maybe make the go 1 octave up. And what I actually, at this point now, what I can do is I can make 1 note go down and 1 note go up. And you can use that for all sorts of it actually mimics a lot of electronic music. And my style of beatboxing, my way of doing it, which for some reason is so appealing, is that I can not only imitate but come up with whole new ways to replicate what a lot of producers do in electronic music. And there's something called sidechain compression, which basically means if you have a bass line, when a kick drum comes in, the bass line will cut out for a second, which creates the impact. But with beatboxing, this happens naturally because it's linear. You can't actually do both things at the same time. For an example would be, so now we have, and so one day I was like, for whatever reason, because what I tend to do is I am constantly beatboxing, and what can happen is through repetition there's a logic that I've discovered that isn't as rational as me going, okay, I am going to practice this sound today, I've written down everything, this is what I'm going to go through, and this is what's going to let me achieve my goal. Through just physically doing it all the time, I can learn, my subconscious learns, and it's not necessarily a conscious thing. So I can be in the middle of beatboxing, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'll do something I've never done before, and I'll stop, and I'll be like, oh, well, I need to remember this. Like this has come out of the blue. So one of these moments was a sound which was, which isn't that impressive. But if I apply this to the tree, so we've got, and I realise I'm going. So what then happened was, which I quite enjoy as a sound. It actually replicates a genre of music, and it's again a producer's technique. It's called an LFO, and it's this type of sound that does this wob wob, which actually kind of spearheaded a new genre of music called dubstep, which is my style of beatboxing. So, would you like to hear an example of my beatboxing?
Yes, please.
Because what I found quite frustrating when I was sitting there was like, no, it's much more powerful and better than that.